Welcome, everyone, to It's a Rap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges, people who inspire and motivate, and people who can educate us on an assortment of topics. Our guest today is Danny Vann. He is a musician, author, alumni of the Elvis Presley Impersonator Hall of Fame, and former foster youth and foster care survivor. Born in 1953, the oldest of 6 kids, Danny has faced many challenges in his life. He is a foster care survivor and a prime example of how to overcome life's obstacles. He has been inspiring and motivating people for decades through his professional music, corporate leadership, and church fellowship roles. He emancipated out of foster care at age 17 and pushed forward to become independent and successful in spite of many difficult events in his life. Danny began his 45-year entertaining career at age 16, performing around the United States, including Las Vegas, and internationally throughout Canada and Nova Scotia. He was promoted to supervisor and speakers bureau in his 20s and became a senior project manager for several multi-state, multi-million-dollar computer projects in corporate America. After open heart surgery and a heart attack 15 years later, he studied and became an ordained minister, foster care advocate, and youth mentor. He is a songwriter, recording artist, and author of My Journey in the Shadow of the King, a story of hope and resilience. Danny brings a multitude of life experience and life hacks to help others improve their life as they navigate their own journey. He encourages people not to panic about challenges along the way and sees all situations as opportunities for learning. His heart's desire is to help others along their own journey. Welcome, Danny, to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ron. Glad to be here.
It's our pleasure. I hope that this interview will shed some light on a subject that a lot of people do not think about and open our eyes and hearts to the foster care issue. I'd like to start at the beginning. Can you tell us what life was like for you and your siblings before the breakup of the household?
Yeah, we kind of had the mom and pop life. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. This was in the early 60s, of course. And so Dad worked at General Motors up in Bay City, Michigan. And we had what I guess I would call a pretty normal life. We went to Grandma's house every Sunday and had dinner and met with the relatives, and things were going along pretty good. There wound up being 6 of us. I'm the oldest of 6. And, I remember my first day at school, Mom walked me to school, and, we had what looked like was going to be a normal life in, suburban America.
Right. Well, Danny, what caused you and your siblings to be farmed out to relatives and then to foster care, and how old were you, and what was the foster home environment like at that time?
Okay, yeah, that's quite a bit. When my parents got divorced, it was pretty violent leading up to it. There was a lot of my mother was Italian, and I remember the arguments over the dinner tables, and we literally had tossed salads in our house. Mom would throw anything she could at Dad, and there was violence. There was broken doors, broken everything. When she threatened to call the police, he'd rip the phone off the wall. When it got too violent, she would shoo us kids upstairs. There was a stairway right off of our dining room, and so the 6 kids would go up the stairs, and they had a door on it with one of those sliding bolts, and she'd lock the door to keep us out of harm's way. And then we had to sit there and listen to the pounding flesh and to the thumping, and pretty soon, after a while, the front door would open. You'd hear it fly open, and all of a sudden the house would go quiet. And so here we are, 6 kids locked upstairs, in a wood frame house.
Yeah.
Sometimes seemed like hours, So it was just crazy. So anyway, Dad finally left. They got divorced. Mom tried to raise us on her own as a waitress and a short order cook in the 60s, 6 kids. It didn't work. She had issues. They both had issues, obviously. And some of the things that she did, she was 15 when she got pregnant, 16 when I was born. By the time she was 22, she had 6 kids. And by the time
that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, by the time she was 30, she was divorced, and had never really had a chance to be an adult or really grow up herself.
Right.
So it was a struggle, and I get it now. I didn't back then, but so she tried. She farmed us out to relatives for a while. That was what they call kinship care today. Is if the family is struggling, you give them to relatives. That didn't work because she never really got on her feet. So we all came back. She remarried. That failed after a year and a half. And then at this point, I'm about 11 years old, 12 years old. And everything fell apart. When she got divorced the second time, she got depressed, and I think she just basically gave up.
Dropped out.
The house went to shambles. It was already a struggle, and it literally got condemned. I remember sitting watching TV and watching rats go by the size of small cats, in our house. And so they finally took us away, and she dropped us off at an orphanage, St. Vincent's Home. Today they call them group homes. And from there, life really took a turn for the better because we had been raised Catholic, and Grandma was Catholic, my mom's mom. So it was actually kind of refreshing to walk through the door. There was like 10, 12 steps going up to the top. It was a typical old orphan Annie institution, you know what I mean? Great big, huge, overwhelming building. But when they opened the door, here's nuns in their habits, ready with smiling faces to welcome us. And we all got new clothes, and 3 squares and all kinds of people doting on us. It was a relief to some extent, even though it was still, we were through a lot of trauma at that point. And the hardest part of that was they split us up, boys and girls. And so from that point, we at least knew we were all together, but we still had that some separation now. From there, it was more or less of a vacation for us from all of the chaos that we had been living in.
Yeah.
It was a decent place. They really kept the kids busy. There was a lot of people around, so they watched over us a lot. You felt safe there. I did, I think my siblings did. And then about a year or so into that, I'm like 13 years old, and they started sending us out 2 by 2 into foster homes. Because it didn't look like anyone was coming back for us. There were a lot of missed visitations. Even in the foster homes, a lot of missed visitations. In fact, we had heard my mom even moved out of town and had a new boyfriend way up north in Michigan. So it was just crazy, just absolutely crazy. The foster home itself was very nice. The family I was staying with had 3 of their own children, and they took me in, and my foster mom was just a saint, for all the issues and the problems and some of the things that we, confronted each other with. She was very patient. She was very kind. And it seemed like no matter what time of day or night I got up or went to talk with her, she was always awake. She was ironing clothes at 2:00 in the morning,
She sounds like a saint. Yeah.
She was there to talk, and she understood that kids coming into her home had already been through a lot, and she wasn't going to give them more to go through. She was going to be there for them, and she listened. She listened a lot. The only time I ever saw her get angry is when my mom didn't show up for visitation weekend, and my little brother, who was there with me at that foster home, there was two of us there, he started crying and he got upset. And that's the only time I saw her get upset. She was upset at my mom for not being there.
Yeah, she wasn't upset at him.
No.
Can you describe to us through the eyes of a child what foster care feels like, and what did you dream and hope for? And tell us about you and your siblings' anger at the situation. Did you trust God to get you through, and what was your thought process on getting through that difficult time in your life?
As a kid, when your parents aren't there for you, you're already wondering what's going to happen with the rest of your life, because your whole world gets broken apart, right?
Right.
And then when mom packed us up and took us to the orphanage, and then drove away, it was like, will I ever see her again? What's going to happen to us now? What did we do wrong? You go through those thoughts of what could I have done to help this situation? Was it caused by the fact that there were six of us? Just all these thoughts go through your head, and and the only thing you can reason is, what did I do, and what could I do to make it better? What could I do to fix it, or something? And then as you walk into new surroundings, everybody handles that differently. I was the oldest, and we had already been through the kinship care cycle. So we had already stayed with relatives. We'd already stayed at some other people's homes. Like, we had babysitters that, every once in a while, if a relative couldn't watch us or what, we'd go to the babysitter's house and spend the weekend or a week or whatever. So some of that we had already become a little used to, which is sad to say,
Yeah.
But still, when you go off into different parts of the city, I was devastated that summer when I couldn't see my brothers and sisters. I had been used to being the father figure of the house and taking care of everybody as the oldest. So what I did, Ron, was I got a job. Here I am, like 14, 15 years old at this point. I got a job as an ice cream cart salesman. And this was back when they had the push carts with the little bells that you would ring on the handle.
You were probably a pretty popular guy then.
So I got a job selling ice cream for the summer, and I saved all my money, and I bought used bikes for my siblings so that we could ride the bikes around the city, because it was Bay City. It was a relatively small town.
Yeah.
We could ride bikes and see each other. So that's how I handled it.
Wow.
My siblings, not so much. They did a lot of crying. They did a lot of lamenting. And no cell phones back then, no internet, no email. You really didn't even get to use the phone that much to call each other.
So you were isolated.
You're isolated. You're isolated. And today, if there's violence, they even send you to a different town. At least we were pretty much in our hometown turf.
Yeah.
So we went through that. I talked with my siblings when I could. I rode my bike to see them if they got frustrated or upset. From there, we went on, and there was reunification in our future. It turned up that two of my sisters were up for adoption. And when I heard about that, I just panicked, because then I thought, oh no, our families get torn apart permanently.
Yeah.
And so I went to the caseworker and I said, what can we do? What can I do? She goes, there's nothing. The only person that can help you is your parents. They have to step up, So I appealed to them to reach out. It turns out, I don't remember what the time frame was, but my dad showed up on visitation weekend, and he promised that he was repairing the house and that he was going to get us all back. And he did.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it wasn't a live happily ever after ending, though, because he had us for a while. He got my brother and me first because he couldn't get all six at once. He had to put bedrooms in the house and all that. So he got a couple of us, and then he got a couple more, and then he finally got all six of us. And then somebody somewhere along the line reported that, I'm only 15 years old and 14 and a half, 15 years old, watching six kids while dad was still at work. So he had to go get a nanny. So he winds up bringing us this nanny, who's this lady that he met at the local Wonder Bar and became good friends with, right?
Right.
Well, they got married. She's an alcoholic, and it wasn't 6 months, and it was like we were right back where we were before it all started. The fights, the arguments. Over the years, he broke her jaw 3 times, but she wouldn't leave him. She wouldn't leave him. So I went back and forth between the parents, and finally, that's when I emancipated out. The caseworkers couldn't really help the situation. And so at 17 years old, my dad went on a camping excursion for the weekend with the rest of the family. And by this time, I'm 16 and a half, almost 17. And I met some people that were in a talent contest for a radio station. And they invited me to come up to Cadillac, 100 miles away, for the weekend. And so I did. And I told them my story on the way up there. And they said, you know what? We're working on the music program with our daughter. They had a teenage daughter. Surprise. And she was a singer. She did Tammy Wynette and I did Elvis. And so the dad saw dollar signs. I didn't realize that at the time, but yeah, you guys could sing duets, And
Sure.
so they drove me back from Cadillac to Bay City. I packed everything I owned in 3 paper grocery bags, 3 bags full.
Wow.
And I left a note on the phone. Dad, you've done enough. I'll take it from here.
How did that go over?
I left the phone number.
Yeah.
And when he got back home, I got the phone call.
Yeah.
And he just said, get your dupa home.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm 17. I'm with tax-paying adults, and they're willing to take me in. So I'm now an emancipated minor. And I guess that those magic words did the trick, because that was it.
He said sayonara.
That was it. I was on my own. So
Danny, all children, especially older children in foster care, deserve a loving family with no expiration date. Yet in the United States, more than 23,000 youth exit foster care and are left to fend for themselves each year. Now, youth who age out of foster care are more likely to engage in risky behaviors and are more likely to experience hardships such as homelessness, joblessness, early parenthood, and substance abuse. You impact current. Let me take a moment out of the podcast to tell you about an exceptional book, Thriving After Sexual Abuse: Break Your Bondage to the Past and Live a Life You Love, dealing with survivors of sexual abuse, written by Denise Bossard, who is a novelist, award-winning photographer, an artist, certified meditation facilitator, contemplative arts teacher, PhD in developmental neuroscience, and a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Denise spent her adulthood healing herself from the traumatic impact the abuse had on her life. She is not a mental health professional. She is a thriver who has traveled a healing journey and is able to share a personal guided experience for readers to find and engage in their own journey to healing, to become thrivers. The book is an eloquent and empathetic self-development book laying out a blueprint for survivors to heal themselves. Denise writes with fierce candor as she shares her own traumatic experience with childhood sexual abuse. The book provides tips and suggestions for readers to seek help, self-reflect, and pursue healing through a range of activities and practices, and offers tangible strategies for readers to reclaim their lives and move forward to a life of thriving. In a book that is at once deeply honest and informative, Denise examines the most difficult of subjects with grace, sensitivity, and profound empathy for survivors, which makes this book an essential guide for the process of healing. Thriving After Sexual Abuse, Break Your Bondage to the Past and Live a Life You Love is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The book will be listed in the podcast notes and in the ads section of my website, itsarapwithrap.com, and also on my Facebook page, It's a Rap with Rap. Foster youth today through your messaging and your book. What drove you to write the book?
Yeah. So throughout my life, after I got out of all this and wound up on my own, I did graduate high school. And, I skipped over a part. It wasn't all bad with the stepmom because she listened to my passion about wanting to be a singer. And she talked my dad into buying me my first guitar. And so
Nice.
when I went to that talent show, I was there with my guitar that my stepmom bought me. And so music was my passion and God was my deliverer, as it were, because I did have prayer and I did have church, while I was at the orphanage. I became an altar boy for the Catholic Mass. And I literally went to church every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So God was there and he helped me through, and my music helped me through. So later in life, as I'm out doing concerts and I'm gonna make it. I made up my mind. I'm gonna make it, whatever it takes, right? So I did everything and anything. And as I got out there and I began to make some success, I began doing a lot of benefit concerts. I did concerts for muscular dystrophy. I did concert for SIDS. I did concerts for families if there was a family that their house caught on fire, and so we did a benefit concert to raise money. Every time one of those things came along, people say, "Can you help?" Yes, I'll do a show. I'll do a concert. Keep the money, And so I did dozens and dozens and dozens of those. Well, finally, I'm in my late 30s, early 40s. And I got the itch to go back to the orphanage and do a concert for them.
Yeah.
So I went back to St. Vincent's Home and they said, "No, thank you. We have a different program now. We only deal with really problematic teenage boys. And we know they don't want an Elvis concert, So I was crushed because, I hear God, I'm trying to give something back and they don't want it. Yeah. What am I going to do?
Right.
So I went and found, another boys' home that I remember driving past over the years, and it wasn't too far away. And I gave the offer to them, and they jumped on it. Well, so good. 3 years in a row, I did concerts there for this boys' home, and we raised community awareness. We went in and did Christmas concerts, and literally, my idea was, I told the counselors, get the boys to write down a wish list of 2 or 3 things that if they could have anything, what would they want for Christmas, right?
Right.
And then I took my guitar, the one that my foster mom got me, and I went to the home and I did little mini concerts with the boys, sang my songs. We cut up, had a lot of fun, played, just really got to know each other. And about the second or third year that I did this, one of the boys went to the director of the home and said, "Who is this guy, and why does he care about us?"
Yeah,
right. Because I'm 40 years old at this point, and I'm a business executive in corporate America. I was in computers, and I'm showing up with my guitar. And I told the director, he called me and asked me that question. I told him, I said, you go back and tell that young man, when I was his age, I was in a home and somebody came and helped me. And now it's my turn to help you. And when you get to be my age, it'll be your turn.
Nice story.
So after that, the following year, we had a huge turnout. I mean, we literally had donations. I worked it. I worked all my contacts, and we had corporations making donations. The home had all kinds of donations. Every boy wound up with everything on their list, which was just awesome. It was awesome. A local restaurant agreed to host a dinner where we were going to have the boys open their gifts, at the dinner. And I did a free concert there. And it was just awesome. I mean, the wife of the restaurant, the owner, got up and danced with all the teenage boys during Love Me Tender, or Can't Help Falling in Love with You. So it was just awesome. And so the following year, the director asked me to attend their statewide volunteer recognition dinner in Frankenmuth, Michigan. And he says, I want you to tell your story. And I said, my story? I said, this is about the kids. I don't matter. And he goes, yes, you do. He said, you have no idea how encouraging it is, number one, to the boys to see that somebody like them could become somebody like you.
Yeah.
Number two, to the counselors, because they could see that somebody was able to break away from the system.
Right.
And number three, he said the whole organization looks at folks, and when they see that somebody can come through this and that what they're doing is good and it is well received and it can help somebody grow, right? So he told me my story needed to be heard. Fast forward about 12 years, and I had a heart attack. I'm sitting on my couch. I'm lamenting, what am I going to do now? And it just kept coming up over and over again. Your story needs to be heard. You need to get out there and tell your story. I had been doing concerts. I'd been shaking hands. When we were in the orphanage, a live band came, performed for us, and they came off the stage and shook my hand. From there, I went out and at all my concerts, especially the Parks and Recs outdoor concerts that I did with kids, I shook every kid's hand that would come forward. I went from one handshake in St. Vincent's Home in 1965, right? I literally, over the years, with all the 1,000+ concerts that I did, I literally shook over 10,000 hands.
Wow.
By doing that.
Wow.
And now
that one handshake meant a lot.
It was just awesome.
It set it off.
Even a little thing that you do, you have no idea the impact it could have on another person and how many other people could be touched by it, right?
Absolutely. Very inspiring.
So when Gordy told me your story needs to be heard, I sat down, I talked to my wife about it, and I said, I can't work anymore. I can't perform anymore. I can't travel anymore. I said, I can get through the internet and I can write a book and I can help people know that they can, if I can do it, they can do it. Right.
Right.
And so that's how the book was born. And it kind of had that dual meaning, my journey in the shadow of the king.
Yeah.
Because I was, my journey was to be like Elvis.
Right.
But as I went through my life, the more I was around people and the more benefits I did and the more things I did for like underprivileged kids, I began to realize it was more important to be like the King of Kings and do things for children and help the kids and help the families. And so that's really where the book came from. And since then, that was 2 years ago, I'm actually working on and getting ready to release a second book.
Right. I'm going to ask you about that a little later on.
All right. Okay.
Got another question for you. Instead of being safely reunified with their families or moved quickly into adoptive homes, many of the fosters will languish for years in foster homes or institutions. So I did a little research and found out that on any given day, there are nearly 424,000 children in foster care in the United States. And in 2019, over 672,000 children spent time in U.S. foster care. And that comes from childrenrights.org. So my question to you is, why are more children being placed in foster care, and what can be done to decrease it, in your opinion?
That's an awesome question and an awesome observation. There's a couple things that are happening out there. First of all, because of the awareness of abuse, child abuse, drug abuse, the decrease in married couples, the increase in single family homes. All of those factors come into play with why the increase in foster care. There's been extreme sensitivity to how kids are being raised, and if there's abuse or neglect or unsafe circumstances. And of course, with the internet and with all the new communication channels we have, there's a lot more exposure now than there was 20, 30 years ago. So the awareness is coming up that there's a lot of kids that just aren't being treated right.
Right.
So you got this pendulum that swings and says, okay, we're gonna pull them out of these terrible circumstances and give them a better life, right?
Right.
Well, what they've learned over the last 20 years and really the last 15 years, there have been a lot of studies about the trauma that is put on these kids when they're taken from their bio families. So just in the last 2 or 3 years, and I've been part of a couple of political not campaigns, but webinars, okay, with some of the Congress. In fact, Dr. Ben Carson, I was just on with him last week, and then my Michigan congressman. There's a move afoot to come around the families to help the families that are struggling. Okay, now if there's blatant abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse, then yes, no question, you have to remove the child. But right. there's a percentage of these kids going into foster care where the whole problem that the family has is poverty. So you got a single family parent here, and they're struggling. My mother's was poverty, okay, because she wasn't abusive to us. maybe there was some neglect, but I'm not going to go there right now. But anyway, so the movement now is to come around the families, and they cited an example in one of these where Child Protective Services, CPS, was called because the kids were coming, they were unclean, unkept, yada, yada, yada. They went to the house, the furniture's trashed, they don't have enough beds for the kids, sleeping on the floor, on, make-do air mattresses. So they warn the parents and warn them again, and they come back. And so finally, you don't have good hygiene, and you don't have good beds for the kids. We're yanking the kids, right?
Right.
And the cost of putting them in foster care and going through all the things they have to be is something like 7 or 17 times, right, what it is to come around the family. And the whole situation here is, if you see a family struggling, try and help them. Yeah. Don't just pull them apart.
Right.
So, the suggestion was buy the family some beds. Find out what you can do to help them.
Take care of some of the physical needs.
Yeah. And so there's a move afoot now to come alongside. There's one called Foster Family Initiative, where they're coming and supporting the bio family to try and prevent that, just like we just said. And there's many, many more things that are going on. 2 or 3 different states, Arizona, Wisconsin, California, they're putting these family first initiatives in. that says
That's
before we take kids away from the family, we're going to try and help fix the family issues.
Well, since you're, very knowledgeable on this subject, I have another question for you. We would hope that most foster home situations are providing a safe, loving environment. But we do know that abuse does occur, and it is a reality no one likes to talk about. Now,
Right.
due to the lack of data and the fact that many cases go unreported, it is impossible to know how many children suffer abuse in the system. The few studies that do exist typically examine the problem on a state-by-state basis. These studies seem to indicate around 20 to 25% of children in state foster care systems suffer abuse. In the California foster care system, at least 38% of the children experience 5 or more placements. So what are your thoughts on the things that need to be done to turn this around?
Yeah. The first thing that we have to do is there needs to be a little more involvement. As I was saying about the family initiative, the same thing is true with the whole program. We've had this throw money at it mentality for a long time. It's just hire more people, do this, do that, and you're not really getting to the heart of the problems. You're trying to bring people in that maybe aren't prepared. There's more training that's required now. We need to have more support networks. There are actually foster family Facebook groups out there now with support, because being a foster parent's not easy, because you're bringing kids that have been traumatized in, and you're not a psychologist,
Right.
and so it's easy to see how over time, trauma and pain and anger and acting out and all these things, you have to be like my foster mom was a saint. You have to, have to have that.
Right.
So what happens when you're a plain old person and you found out you got yourself in over your head, and you don't have the heart to send the kid packing, or you have a spouse that was only half in to begin with.
Right.
So this is where coming alongside of people, being more involved, having more programs, more support networks, pulling more churches in. There's a new church I say new. There's an organization out there called Care Portal, and Care Portal is trying to create church networks for fosters. Okay, to support the foster family, to draw new foster families, to go back and help the bio families. They're literally trying to do that. James 1:27. Perfect spirituality is visit the widows and the orphans in their time of distress, right? So that's awesome. So all of the above are churning. There's pockets, but it just takes this kind of program like you have, Ron, to get the word out there that, hey, folks, if you're wondering why some kid at school is either A, bully, or B, withdrawn, too shy, or C, failing, for no good reason because they're intelligent, those are 3 indicators. There's something wrong in River City. Look into it. Try and help. Ask what you can do. Just listen. Common sense. And you can search things out. There's foster everything in every state. If you go to the internet and search foster care, foster closet, foster support, what can I do to help?
Yeah. Well, tell us about your passion for music and Elvis that you have always had, and what advice do you have for people to follow their passions?
Yes, that's great. Thank you for asking that. I firmly believe that everybody has a purpose. There's a reason why you're here. And And especially if you've lost your way, if you've lost your family, if you've lost something dear to you, we all tend to migrate to something that comforts us. There's something that you like to do, whether it's fishing, whether it's hunting, if it's music, if it's, crocheting, whatever, it could be getting on TikTok and making a dance video, right?
Right.
But what I discovered is and they just, go back to the Holocaust and some of these survivor stories. How did they do it? They had a purpose. They had a reason to get up every day, right? You need to find the thing I encourage people to do is find a reason, find your love. Now, I wrote an article and I published it called "Follow Your Passion into Your Career." Okay. It's out on the internet. And it goes through a whole series of ways to help discover. If you don't know what your passion is, you don't really have something, there's an assessment test you can take online, free. It takes 5 minutes to find out what you're gifted in. Just what kind of natural abilities do you have?
Yeah.
And that could give you a push in that direction. For me, it was music. And I always loved to sing. I always wanted to be like Elvis. And I said, someday I'm going to do it. And I did. A lot of hard work, but to me, it wasn't work. It was love. I loved to do it. I would sing at the drop of a hat, sing for anybody, anytime, anywhere. I just love to sing. Right.
Yeah. And
there's people who love to do all kinds of things.
Sure.
And to me, if you get to do that in your life, you're very fortunate. That's awesome. Now, I discovered early in my life, thank goodness, that I couldn't make a full living at being an impersonator, right?
Right.
So I took a job in corporate America, and the assessment test, the aptitude test, they used to call it, that I took back in middle school, told me that I had a very logical mind, right? And that I would do good in a logical type of a job where I would apply myself, like accounting or something like that, being a lawyer or whatever. So in my mid-20s, as you mentioned, excuse me, I got into corporate America, in computers in 1974, 75 were just starting to take off. And so I got into the computer field, which I was a shoe-in for because of my logical fit that I had. And had I never taken that assessment test, I don't think I would have had the confidence to even try out for that job. But I tried out. I was a good fit, and I found a lot of success in it. So I was able to actually have two careers over my lifetime.
Right.
The corporate America paid the main bills, paid all the medical expenses, and I had my entertainment career on the side. I did as many as 60 concerts a year.
But your entertainment career must have been the fun one, right?
It was the one that, how they say you've got to go exercise to de-stress or go, plant flowers or whatever. To me, it was get on stage, and it was not only fun, but I was able to excel in that. And it just, I was able to take my family places that I never would have done otherwise,
right?
Because I would have been too busy in corporate America. But we went places and somebody else paid the bill to get us there. It was awesome.
Yeah. Danny, would you please give us your favorite life lesson quote and tell us why it resonates with you and how it was relevant in your life?
I think the main quote that I use the most is that life is a journey, and this is just the next step on your journey. So don't panic. That things that go wrong are actually opportunities for growth. It's a long statement, but it's all interconnected, right? So being on this journey you don't know what's going to happen next. It's a lot of adventures strung out across many years, and don't give up. Just to me, it was as I began to see things. The first thing that you begin looking at is, okay, if mom and dad aren't together anymore, and our house got condemned, and I got put in an orphanage, and then I'm in a foster home, where is my home? What is home? And so you begin looking at, I guess home is where my heart feels safe.
Right.
That's my main home. Yeah. But beyond that, my home is in my journey. It's where I,
Well, I want to touch on something that I read about you. You talk about how people can leverage the power of gratitude to improve our overall mental wellness. Yes. How do you define the concept of gratitude, and why do you think so many people do not feel gratitude?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Gratitude to me is having an appreciation for the things that you have and the things that come into your life. It's being able to be thankful for what you do have, instead of resentful that someone else has more or different or better or got it at a different time than you did. So having an attitude of gratitude is, I've always been a silver lining person, looking for the good in things. And it has helped me tremendously, because instead of the glass half empty, to me, it's always half full, because right. I know that if I apply myself, we can make something out of this. We can make it better.
Right.
And so, what was the second half of your question? First, you asked me to define
it. Why do you think so many people do not feel gratitude? And while I'm at it, tell us how increased gratitude on our part can help and enhance our lives, and the exact ways each of us can leverage the power of gratitude.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So why do I think a lot of people don't have gratitude today? Yeah. There's multiple reasons, because we have different generations that express different reactions to things in their lives. Okay. The first one is that I think people over the years have gotten to the point where we grew up and our parents gave us everything. They promised us everything. They told us we're perfect all the time. And so now we get out in the world, and the world ain't doing that.
Right.
The world's kind of mean and tough. And so how can I be grateful when I'm not being handed everything like I was when I was home? So there's this feeling of entitlement. There's this feeling of, gee, it's not as good here as I thought it was going to be. And instead of digging in and trying to make it better, people just get cynical and angry, and it's crazy, the way the world has gotten so mean, and people bully each other. You've got anonymity. You've got people who, they hide behind their computer screen. They hide behind a username. And so they kind of feel like, you know what, I can say what I want. I can be what I want. Who cares? Nobody can do anything to me anyway. And it's just very sad. I also believe that we've lost a lot of moral ground over the last couple of decades. I'm in my late 60s, and so I've been here, back in the happy days, as it were.
Yeah.
some of those days when life was a lot more simple, and it just seems like people they just don't want to be grateful. They just want more. There's greed, and they're constantly being bombarded of, you need this, you need to look like this, you need to have this, you should be here, you should this, you should. The marketing is just totally taken over everything. Yeah. And everywhere you look, you need to be better. You can't be happy with what you have because I got something new,
Yeah.
And so it just feeds into that.
Well, hopefully people are hearing this and maybe they're reevaluating it in their minds. You are launching a second book soon. What is the
Yeah.
name of it, and how can your book help former fosters?
The name of my new book is called From Chaos to Forgiveness, a journey to freeing yourself from past pain and trauma. From chaos to forgiveness, a journey to freeing yourself from past pain and trauma. And what I've done with this book is documented a journey, a life's journey through all the chaos, through the foster care, through post foster care. There's this view that kids that have come through the system have all the symptoms and signs of PTSD, just like combat veterans do. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that being said, as I began to understand what's been going on in foster care over the last couple of years, that I've been really digging in and learning more about it, I realized that there's this whole process that has to be taken to get over all the trauma, to get over all those things that have happened to you. And many of us carry them well into adulthood. And some people are still walking around with a lot of anger and pain and, resentment and hate. And so I began looking at that and saying, what could I do as an example, like I was in the first book, as like to help encourage people. I went out and said, there's a grieving process, and they've defined the steps in grieving, right?
Right.
I wonder if there's a forgiveness process. And so I went out and did some research, and I found Robert Enright has a forgiveness model that he's been working with for like 2 decades. And it has 4 key phases and 20 some steps in between. And when I went through that documentation that he had out there, I discovered that I went through those phases in my life over the years.
Right.
And I thought, if I put these 2 together of the journey and the process, and now start looking to how do you actually get past all this trauma and the PTSD of being a foster child or foster victim, as it were, not foster victim, but a victim of all this. How do you move beyond that, and how can I help people do that? So what I did is I infused these 4 phases and these 20 some steps throughout this book, talking about life's journey and life's phases. And there's going to be people that are all kinds of different places in that journey, obviously, as they pick up the book. But there's examples of what happened to you, what you can do about it, how to get some help, where to go for help. There's all kinds of links in there, all kinds of different ideas on ways to deal with circumstances. Of course, I did go to counseling for years, multiple sessions over the years. And so I talk about all those things, how they can help you, some of the good, some of the bad, some of the challenges. And so the book is there to be kind of not just a roadmap or a cheat sheet, but it's there to be a reference that says, gosh, this is happening to me. I wonder what someone else has done in these circumstances. And you may not be bold enough to get online and ask somebody because you don't want people to know your problems. But if it's in a book, and if it's someplace where you can take a look and you can find out that there's links, there's websites, there's organizations, there's therapeutic counseling groups that specialize in dealing in different kind of situations. So that's what this new book is all about, is putting all that at your fingertips where you can go and find some sort of peace in your life, with the goal being ultimately getting to the point where you don't necessarily say, oh, gee, I forgive you, let's get back together and try to make a normal life. You can't change other people. Right. You can only help yourself, right?
Right.
And so once you learn that, your parents are people too, they make mistakes, they have problems. You go through these phases, and you ultimately get to the point where you start to look at them through your adult eyes. Things that happen to you as a kid, you carry them with you. But then as you get to be an adult, you have kids of your own. I've got grandkids now. You see things from a different perspective, and you look backwards, and you can be disgusted that a child, you, were treated the way the parents, your folks, did. And you can be disgusted. You can be angry at it. But then you can finally get to the point where you can step back and say, I wonder what made them think that was okay. And you begin to start to investigate, get some of that information, and learn some of those things. So that's what this book does. It takes you through all those steps.
Well, your message in your ebooks can help foster parents and counselors too. Danny, how can people get in touch with you through your various platforms?
Okay, so I'm out on, first of all, I have a website, DannyVann.com, and there's two N's in both names, Danny Vann, VANN.com. All this stuff you can reach through there, including my Facebook. I'm out there as Danny Vann, foster care. Danny Vann, former foster. You can find me there. You can find me on YouTube. Again, Danny Vann, foster care. You can find me out on LinkedIn. And so all these things, I've got various articles that you can get to through my website. The ebook, by the way, is free. It's called Foster Youth Survivor Guide, right? What I did was, it was one of the first things I came out with about a year and a half ago, was I discovered that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of foster youth aging out or recently aged out, or they're homeless. By the way, 40% of your 23,000 foster youth, within 2 years of aging out, 40% will have a brush with being homeless.
Wow.
40%.
That's a lot.
So when I heard that, and I saw those stats, and I see the kids struggling, I put together this ebook, a survivor guide, and it has information about how to figure out what career to pursue. It's got the links to the free assessments. It has links to 211, which is the emergency telephone number that kids can call. Anyone can call. They're there as community resources. I have links to homeless shelters. I have links to government programs to help former foster youth. If you've ever been awarded the court, there's programs that will help you all the way up to 26 years old. And they'll pay your way for GED. They'll pay your way to college. And you can qualify for grants. You got to do some work, but it's nice to know someone's willing to help you.
Yeah, it's great that you're putting all this out there.
Yeah, there's another organization called UCU, YOUSEEYOU.org. They have free mentors, Ron, for life. You cannot age out of their system.
Oh, good.
So if you're 30 something and you're still struggling and you can't figure out what your problem is, get a mentor. Find somebody who can come alongside of you, and it's free. They offer this up, and they also have life coaches, and they have 24-hour chat line at ucu.org.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And there's just dozens and dozens of organizations that are out there. Childhelp.org, the child abuse hotline. If you come out of the system and you got siblings that are still in, if they are being abused, 1-800, the number 4, a child. 1-800-4-A-CHILD. You can report it. They will investigate. They'll send someone out to help. And they're not just going to yank people around. They're going to do full research, and they send counselors and everything.
That's great.
These are holistic programs. They don't just stick a Band-Aid on a scar,
Yeah.
They're really trying to get involved and help people.
Well, I will post all of your contact information in the podcast notes and include a link to your website on my Facebook page and my website. It's awesome. Thank you, Danny, for sharing your story with us and being a guiding light for so many people in the foster care community that you touch. You are an inspiration to us all. God bless you for all you do for others, and may God watch over you and lead you on a successful path going forward. We want to hear from our listeners. If you have any comments or suggestions to better the podcast, contact us on our website. It's awrapwithrap.com. And Facebook, it's a Rap with Rap. You can email us at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.